First of all, Hazak Baruch, thank you guys so much for coming. Rainy day, Erev Chag before Thanksgiving. I know it's not easy to come out. I got a lot of calls, like I would come out, but we're eating Thanksgiving. I said, Thanksgiving's tomorrow. It said, yeah, but 2 days Thanksgiving in Chutz La'aretz. Literally everyone's eating tonight, everybody's eating tomorrow, so Baruch Hashem, you guys made it out. This week's topic is on Parashat Vayetze. Now, it's very interesting, all these parashiyot that we're going through now in the beginning of the Torah, because not only are we telling a story, right? Not only are we going in sort of a sequence that starts from creation, and it teaches us about Adam Rishon, and Sarah, and Abraham, and Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It's not only that there's a sequence to exactly how these characters are developing, but there's actually a building that's taking place. There's a build-up until it reaches a climax at the end of the Sefer of all of Bereshit. And for us to kind of continue this building saga, right? Because I don't want to just come and tell you what happened, a snapshot and go. I want to sort of build. Every week we're going to build on a different idea. You know, last week's parasha, we learned about Yitzchak and we learned about Rivka. And for many, 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 many years, these two Gedolim, the son of Avraham Avinu and Rivka Aminu, Tzedeket, they didn't have children. For many years she was barren. And it's a very common theme that you'll see throughout the Torah, that the women of Judaism are always barren. They're always akarot. And there's a reason for that, because Hashem loves the prayers of the tzaddikim and the tzaddikot. Hashem loves to hear them pray, and He wants to hear the tefillot. And likewise for us too, by the way. He wants to hear our tefillot. You know, it says that when Hashem created the world, Hashem created all the flowers and the plants all just below the surface of the earth. So the famous question is, I don't understand, what's the point of creating it such that the earth is hiding all this grass and these plants below the surface? The answer is that He was waiting for Adam Rishon to pray for it to come up. Because Hashem loves the prayers of the tzaddikim. You have Rivka Amenu, and she is barren for many, many years. Until what happens? Yitzchak and Rivka, they stand on opposite corners of the room, and they pray opposite each other to who? To Hashem. And they pray to Hashem for a child that's going to continue the progeny of the Jewish nation. And it's fascinating because at some point, Rivka realizes she's pregnant. And when she's walking down in front, and she walks in front of a shul, in front of a place of Kiddusha, and in front of a place of holiness, the baby, it seems like he wants to come out. And then whenever Rivka Aminu would walk in front of a place of Avodah Zarah, a place of ill repute, a place that's worshiping idols, the same baby would want to come out. And he'd be pushing. So he's like, I don't understand. What is this schizophrenic child of mine that's trying to come out here by Kiddusha, here by Tum'ah? What exactly is happening? So Rivka Aminu, she goes to the yeshiva of Shem ve'Ever, the two biggest rabbis of the generation. She goes to the yeshiva and she asks, what's going on? What is happening here? And the rabbi tells her that she has two great nations inside her stomach, that the people that are, the babies that are within her, from them will come two great, great nations. And who are those nations? Who are those people? Yaakov and Esav. And you have from here the beginning, or it seems what is the beginning of this cosmic battle between good and evil, of Olam Haba versus Olam Hazeh, this world versus the world to come. It's going to be this cosmic force. It's going to be Yaakov versus Esav. But you know what? For me to sort of begin to understand exactly what Yaakov and Esav were really fighting about, because we have to understand there's a battle between them. There's this cosmic force that's going to continue from this parashat to next week, to next week, to next week. Exactly what are they fighting against? This world versus the next world. What is the battle about? I want to start off with this actually beautiful story that I heard. Actually, Wayne Dyer writes it in his book many, many years ago. And he writes it about two babies. You know the story, Joseph? Sorry. So the story goes like this. He says, it's not a real story, it's a mashal, but I think it's a beautiful way to set the groundwork, to set the table. He says, there's two babies inside of a mother's womb. And one baby goes to the other baby and says, do you believe in life after delivery? And the other baby says, of course there's life after delivery. What do you mean? It can't just be that this is all that there is to it. It can't be that this is all that we have here. And the other baby says, nonsense. There's no such thing as life after delivery. All we have is here. You know, this is exactly how we sustain ourselves. The way that life is fed through us, this is exactly all we have. And the baby number two says to the other babies, don't you think that maybe after delivery, their life will be different? Maybe we could walk with our legs. Maybe we can use our mouths to eat. And the other baby says, nonsense. The umbilical cord. The umbilical cord is what scientifically sustains life. And the other baby says, but maybe what if after delivery, life is just different? And we'll be able to do such things because what we're doing here in this space that we are, maybe it's just a preparation for what will come. And the other baby says, that's logically to be excluded. The umbilical cord, it's not long enough. So even if we come out, we're not going to be able to eat. We're not going to be able to walk so far. It's just nonsense. It's not true. And the other baby says, but what if things just evolve and we're different? So the other baby responds, but yeah, if that's true, how come no one has ever come back? Okay, so you want to say that there's life after delivery, how come no one has ever come back? And the other baby says, but surely we'll get to meet mother. And the other baby says, you really believe in mother? You really believe that there's this thing called mom, this thing called mother? The other baby says, yeah. You know, in the very silence, sometimes if you really listen closely, you can perceive her voice and you can perceive her presence. And if you're really attuned to what's around us and what you see, you can actually start to realize that, yeah, mother's a real thing. That was the conversation that was recorded between two babies in the womb. And I think this beautifully sets the tone for what is this cosmic battle between Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov is fighting for what? He's fighting for Olam Haba. What's Olam Haba? Olam Haba is the world to come. See, this world, we look at this world as Bnei Torah, as people that are children of Yaakov Avinu, that this world is just the foyer that'll lead us into the next world, says the Mishnah Navot. It's just a preparation. We do mitzvot to build the palaces up there. We build a family, we have children, we learn Torah, we teach Torah only in an effort to prepare ourselves for what is to come post-delivery. Esav Rasha, what does he say? He says, no, eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we shall die, right? The famous mantra of the Goyim. He says, all there is this world. That's all there is. He says, the point of this world is to accumulate riches, is to accumulate wealth, is to accumulate as much as we can pleasure from this world, because after delivery, there is just nothing. It's just silence, it's just emptiness. But my friends, let's look at this conflict a little bit more deeply. Let's understand. See, when there's a conflict, when there's a fight, when there's a battle, it's usually when we're battling or conflicting over something that we both want, right? So it's like, for example, if I want someone's property, he wants that same property, me and him are going to be fighting for it, right? I'm going to say, I want it, I'm going to leave the bigger offer, he's going to leave the bigger offer, and so on and so forth. But it seems from here that Yaakov and Esav, they want different things. One is obviously fighting for Olam Haba, one is fighting for Olam Hazeh. They're fighting for two different worlds. It's like you take two kids to an ice cream store, and one kid is going to say, I want chocolate ice cream. And the other kid is going to say, I want vanilla ice cream. Okay, so are they fighting against each other? No, they want different things. So all this time that we're being taught that Yaakov and Esav, they're pulling in different directions, it shows that they're not actually disagreeing on anything. So what is the depth of this conflict? And I think to summarize the depth of this conflict, it's to understand specifically what each one really wanted. See, both of them wanted a share of both worlds. Yaakov wanted this world and he wanted the next world. Esav wanted this world and he wanted the next world. But the key difference between the two is they fought for what is the primary part of it. Yaakov said that the primary point of life is a spiritual pursuit. The primary point of why we're here is to get there, to get to Olam Haba. But we use Olam Hazeh as a vehicle to get there. We use our physicality, we use our wealth, we use our riches, we use whatever we accumulate in this world in order only to get to the Olam Haba. Esav said exactly the opposite. He said, no, that's not the point. Olam Haba is not the point. Olam Hazeh is the point. He said the primary point of life is this world. Spirituality comes secondary. Yaakov said spirituality comes primary. So the real battle here is they wanted both, but really they were fighting in which one's primary and which one is secondary. So my friends, you see here how Yaakov Avinu, he wanted to show that spirituality really here is the ikr, that's the point. So let's see exactly how Esav actually lived in Olam Hazeh. If the point was that this is the world that he wanted, let's see the world that he got. So Esav says the Torah that he marries 3 wives. Now back in the day, we can surmise, the Torah says, that with every wife, maybe she came with a father-in-law, she came with her own home, she came with wealth, right? So Esav, you can imagine he was a wealthy man. You know, he had different wives every day of the week and go to someone else. He had different properties, he had different things, right? You could see it, it's a lot. But what happened when says the Pasuk, that Esav was tired. He was in the field, he was hunting all day, he was hunting whatever he was doing, he was in the field, he was osek in Olam Hazeh, and he was tired. Where did he go? He didn't go to any of his wives' homes. He didn't go to any of the properties that he owned. Whose home did he go to? He went to Yaakov's home. His brother, who sat in Kollel, the one who learned Torah all day, because he knows only in that home is he going to be welcomed, is he going to have food to eat, is he going to have a place where he can call home. So he has 3 wives, 3 homes, but not one does he go to. That's one idea. Many years later, Esav is sent to hunt food for his father Yitzchak. Yitzchak says, go hunt me some game, get me some food, and he goes and he starts hunting. And Rivka Imenu, the tzedeket, she realizes that she has to put on this ruse, she has to put on this trick, in order for Yaakov to really get the bracha, to get the bechar, to get the bracha. So what does he do? What does she do? She dresses Yaakov in Esav's clothing, right? We know. She takes the furry coat, she takes the clothing, she puts it on Yaakov's arms, and the famous line, Hakol Kol Yaakov Ve'adam Yedei Esav, that the Yitzchak Avinu, he feels his arm and he says, your voice, it sounds like Yaakov, but your arm, it feels like Esav. She put on the clothing of Esav. And the question is begging to be asked. What is Esav's clothing doing in his mother's home? And the Medrash says, the custom is that we move out of our homes when we get married, we take our clothing with us. We don't leave it in our parents' house, right? The idea is that the Midrash says that his wives would always leave Esav penniless. They would rob from him, they would steal from him, they would show that his possessions are nothing but theirs. So what would he do? He would leave his clothing in the home of his mother. So he's hungry, he's tired, he goes to his brother's home. He's hungry, he goes to fight, to hunt for his father. His clothing he leaves in his mother's home. So this is Olam Hazeh. This is the world that he's building for himself. He has no home to call his own. He goes to his brother and his mother. His clothing's not his wealth does belong to him. Many, many years later, the brothers, they start to fight. Esav and Yaakov, and they meet each other. And Yaakov, in an effort to appease his brother, he starts sending him gifts. He sends him wealth, he sends him possessions, he sends him jewelry, he sends him jewels, pearls, mountain loads of jewels. And Esav says, I don't understand. We made a deal in the stomach of Rivka that I was going to get Olam Hazeh, Esav says, and you were going to get Olam Haba. How is it that you're coming here and bribing me with jewelry, with gifts? The Torah says that he left Lavan's house with 1,000,000 flocks of sheep. How can it be that you are more wealthy than me? That wasn't part of the deal. What does Yaakov say to Esav? He says, you're right. Really, my portion is Olam Haba. And your portion is really meant to be Olam Hazeh. But the difference between you and me is like this. While my goal is to get to the next world, I use this world as a vehicle to get me there. So when I amass wealth, when I amass things, flocks of sheep, building a family, when I have jewels, whatever it is I have, I'm only using it as a means for mitzvot, as a means for chesed, as a means for propelling me forward. The thing that serves the primary is always secondary. If in my life primarily is my spirituality, it's how I'm growing as a person, it's how I'm growing in relation to my connection to Hashem, everything else falls by the wayside, it becomes secondary. Yaakov says to Esav, he says, for you, your primary aim is this world. And because you're growing in this world, just wealth for the sake of wealth, jewelry for the sake of jewelry, homes for the sake of homes, he tells to his brother, you end up losing both. And Yaakov ends up gaining both. Rav Galinsky, he tells a beautiful story. He says that, Rav Galinsky, he lived in pre-war communist Russia. And in communist Russia, if ever there was a time that anyone would practice Judaism in the open, anyone would practice Judaism openly practicing, putting on tefillin, Shabbat, they would send them to the gulags of Siberia. Siberia, they had the frigid winters, instant frostbite, without the proper attire, without the proper clothing. They would work them like concentration camps in the Nazi Germany. So he tells that he remembers he once had this friend, his name is Shmuel. And see, back in the gulags of Siberia, they stripped them of their Jewishness. They stripped them of their Jewish warmth. There was no kashrut. There was no Shabbat. You had to work on the Sabbath. You had to eat treif if you didn't want to go hungry. Or your other option was just eating bread and salt. That was the only other option. So he says he remembers this one man, Shmuel, and over time working in the camps, not that he judges him, not that he holds him accountable, but he fell off. He stopped becoming religious. And many years later, Rav Galinsky tells over that he remembers that their paths ended up crossing. And he says, you know what? Let me call Shmuel over. Let me invite him to my home. I know that he lives maybe just one town over. Rav Galinsky lived in Bnei Brak. He invited his friend over. He says, Shmuel, I said, it's Rav Galinsky. How are you? It's Yankala. It's Yankala. How are you? He said, Yankala, I hear you're still religious. He says, yes. Listen, I want to invite you for Shabbat. Come for a Friday. He said, listen, Yankala, I don't do this Shabbat. I don't do this religiousness anymore. It's not for me. He says, listen, I'm not asking you to commit to anything. Just come for one Shabbos, come have a meal. We'll have the do Shalom Aleichem, we'll sing, you'll have the good food, it'll be very nice. He says, you know what? I'm one town over from Bnei Brak. For me, it's not too much of a walk. I'll do it. He commits. Rav Galinsky goes to shul, he davens, he comes home, and he's waiting in his home. He doesn't do Shalom Aleichem, he doesn't do Kiddush. He's waiting with his wife and his children, and 1 hour goes by. 2 hours goes by. 3 hours goes by. The Malachim, they can wait, but his children, they start getting restless. The wife, she starts getting hungry. She says, listen, it doesn't seem like he's coming. So the whole Shabbat goes, and Shmuel does not come over Rav Galinsky's house. He's not mad, he's not angry, but he gets worried. So Sunday morning, he calls Shmuel. He says, Shmuel, what happened? We waited for you many hours. Is everything okay? Tell me what happened. He says, Rav Yaakov, I kept my promise. It's true. I was one town over, and I started making my way over to Bnei Brak on Friday night. And as I was walking, let me tell you what happened. He says, I'm walking past all these shuls, all these yeshivot, and I see them illuminated with light. And I hear the hazan, the singing, the beautiful music of Friday night tefillah. I hear them singing, and all these memories, they begin to stir back in my mind. And as I'm walking past these shuls, I see the women, they're pushing double carriages, infants in both, toddlers holding on to either side. And there's women congregating, waiting for their husbands. They're waiting to come home to eat the Shabbat meal, something that they can enjoy together. He says, and as I'm walking, I see people, the kids are playing, and the fathers are davening, and the women are waiting, and everyone's together. And I'm thinking to myself, Shtabach Shemo, how many years has it been? How many kids does Rav Yaakov Glinsky have at this point? 7, 8, 9, 10? I'm going to come as a guest, and I'm going to sit there like a shmo, like nothing, like I've achieved nothing. He says, Rav Yaakov, I know that because of the actions that I chose in my life, I know I gave up olam haba. I know that. I'm not keeping kashrut, I'm not keeping Shabbat, I'm not shomer Torah mitzvot, I'm not doing any of the mitzvot. I know I gave up olam haba. But Rav Yaakov, never in my life did I think I would also give up olam hazeh. See, when the goal is spirituality, and we use it as a vehicle, we use olam hazeh as a vehicle to gain our spirituality, to gain the people that we grow into, what we're meant to achieve, then we always end up winning both. But if the aim is just physicality for the sake of physicality, grow the business for the sake of wealth, for the sake of itself, then we end up losing both in the process. You end up losing what it means to grow a family, to have a relationship with your children, to have a relationship with your wives, to build a community, to build a shul, to build whatever it is that Hashem has promised you. On the other side of that fence, you're going to see untold riches, but in this world, you invest. We have this concept in the world, we have the idea of retirement. 401k, right? We put away today so that after 65, 69, we can reap the benefits. This idea of putting away in this world to only reap away later is not so foreign to us because we understand that as financial investors, right? There's this idea that there's a retirement account. You invest, you put. Only later can you touch it. It's the same idea in spirituality, but the goal is for when you retire. The goal is not for now, the goal is for then. Now, boys, if this whole idea is to live a life that's focused on ruchaniyut, to focus on spirituality, if that has to be our aim, our lives are constantly riddled with struggle, are constantly riddled with obstacles. You know that when you're going in the right path and you're met with struggle and you're met with obstacles, that's how you know you're on the right path. It's only when a person's not going on the right path that in many instances, most cases, things are going easy, he has no troubles, he has no struggle. The guy who's doing the wrong thing, everything seems to be going swimmingly. But the guy who's constantly trying to grow, he's struggling, he's eating of himself to keep Shabbat, he's eating of himself to give tzedakah, to give meiser, to give of himself, he's met with struggle. Which brings us to this week's parasha. This week's parasha, Parashat Vayetze. Again, we're building. And they're not just telling a story, we're building these concepts. I want to present to you tools that the Torah is teaching us. How do we do what the Avot did? It's fascinating because in this week's parasha, you have to have a keen eye. You have to study it in terms of its small details. It's very interesting. I'll tell you, like for example, let's say you walk into your house and you walk in and you smell something. You smell a gas leak, right? The first thing that goes in your mind is that this gas leak, it's not a local issue. This gas leak could affect the entire house. All the gas lines, outside, the garage, the pipeline, the barbecue, right? Everything. This gas that you smell, the faintest smell of it can affect everything. If you study Torah with such a level of detail, and you notice that maybe there's something wrong, or why is this word the way it is, you start to understand that there are ideas that once you bring them out in their clarity, they're really meant to teach you something beautiful. So what happens this week's parasha? Yaakov Avinu, he runs at the behest of his mother Rivka. She says, listen, your brother is very upset at you, that you took the bracha, you took the bechar, go, run, and leave. And he leaves, he ends up penniless because he gets robbed on the way, and he goes in the middle, and his life is rushing past him. He's in a moment where he has no wife, he has no kids, he has no money because he was robbed on the way by Esav's kids. He's robbed on the way, he has no money, he has nothing going for him. And he's coming from what? He was just studying in the yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever. He was studying where it was menuchat nefesh, there was no problems. He was living a life of success, learning for the sake of learning. He was growing his olam haba, and everything is going well. His father's well, his mother's well, nothing to worry about. He's oshev ohalim, he's sitting in the tent and he's learning. And now all of a sudden when he leaves, he's on the road, life starts to move really fast. And he sees Esav is going past, he's trying to get him. He has nothing growing for him in terms of his life. And in the middle of all this chaos, in the middle of all the fact that his life is now seemingly crumbling before his eyes, what does he do? The Torah says, that in a place he decides to rest. And what he does is he takes stones. He takes stones and he puts them around his head. So comes the Torah and teaches us that the reason he put stones around his head is that because there were chayot ra'ot, there were animals that tried to protect his head physically. There were animals that were going to try to get to him, and the Torah teaches that he tried to protect his head so animals wouldn't come to him. But comes the Torah and teaches that all of these stones, they started to fight against each other. And they said, we want to be under the head of the tzaddik. We want to be under the head of the tzaddik. And Hashem made a miracle, and he combined all of these stones, and Yaakov's head rested on one stone. This is complex. How do we understand what's going on over here? First of all, the Torah teaches us that he put stones around his head. And then the Torah is teaching us that he put his head on one stone. So which one is it? Can it be both? Is it one? Is it two? What's the Torah trying to teach us here? And the answer is like this. In an effort to build a life that is spiritually focused, in an effort to build a life where we know the goal is olam haba, that's the goal, that's what Yaakov was fighting for in the Beten of Rivka. That's what he was trying to fight Esav against. We're going to be met with struggle. And Yaakov, in the middle of all the struggle of his life, where everything seems to be turmoil, everything's going down the drain, what does he do? He rests in his conflict. And the first thing he does is he protects his head. Yaakov Avinu is teaching us, that whenever we're faced with conflict, whenever we're faced with struggle and challenge, don't run away from struggle. Don't run away from challenge. You know, you have this famous idea of fight or flight. And when we're faced with things that we don't know how we're going to handle, the first thing we want to do is just flight. We want to go. We want to leave this area. Change our circumstance. Yaakov Avinu, what does he do? He rests his head exactly where he is. And he teaches, protect your head. What does it mean, the first idea, to protect your head? Protect your thoughts. Protect your values. Protect all that you know to be important. You know, in many cases, when people come to me with problems, or when people in general, they have an issue, and they come to anyone with a problem, they want advice, they want an eitzah. They come and say, listen, I'm going through this seems to be not working out, the deal fell through, I'm trying to make partner here, I'm trying to make a business deal there, it's not working. And the other guy is going to say, but why have your values shifted? Why has your mind started to turn in a way that's not right? You know, there was a famous case, and that's not a famous case, but it happened recently, that a guy said that his wife wanted a divorce from him. Wanted a divorce. And the guy comes to the rabbi and he says, listen, Rabbi, I can't give her a get. I can't divorce her. And the rabbi says, I understand, why not? He says, you're successful, you have a business, everything's going for you. She checked out of the relationship, give her a get. He says, I'm afraid of what's going to become if I leave her and if she leaves me. If we're separated, I'm afraid of what's going to be. Now, if you look at this case from the outside, you see a guy, he's successful, he has a good job, he's a very good guy, and he says, I'm afraid of what's going to be after the relationship ends. So the rabbi tells him very simply, he says, the relationship doesn't end when you give the divorce. The relationship ended years ago when she decided to check out. But because when the person is in the struggle, he doesn't realize what's going to be after, what's going to be before, how am I going to make it through, he loses sight of what? His ideas in his head. And it's very common. You know, when we're going through something, it's very easy to just mibulbal and take this one's advice and take that one's advice. You know, there was another case where a guy came to me. He was a very, very good guy. He knew what he wanted to do in his life. He was studying, he was very focused, had his career in his mind. He knew what he wanted to achieve and he knew how to get there. But it came a point that he started getting new friends. And now these friends, they weren't bad friends, but they started gossiping a little bit more. They started speaking about other people. Look at this guy's car. Look at this guy's watch. Look at what this guy's making, how much he's making. He's working less, he's making more. Look what's going on. And then I meet this guy a couple weeks later and I see that he's changed. Not for the worse, he didn't become a bad guy, but his thoughts, they started to change. I started to see that a little bit of the influence of the people around him started to infiltrate his mind. And his thoughts that were originally his sense of self, he lost in the process of his growth. The biggest thing that we can risk giving up when it comes to times of trouble is giving up who you are, is giving up that sense of self. You know, we think that, you know, we speak about all the time, the YouTube algorithm, the social media algorithm. We think that it's catered to what we want, right? That's what we think. But really, the algorithm is constantly changing our minds and affecting the opinions that we have. We hold the opinions that we have because the algorithms are feeding us this information for us to change our thoughts. It's not because it's recommended because that's what we like. They want us to have these thoughts and therefore they're going to keep feeding us those ideas whose opinions no longer become ours. It's because we continue to consume things that are not the things that we really know to be true to us. First thing Yaakov Avinu does in the midst of this trouble, protects his head. Now what's the other opinion? That all these stones, they become one. And the stones are fighting, let that tzaddik rest on me, let that tzaddik rest on me. What's the lesson that Yaakov is teaching us here? He's saying that once you're trying to overcome this struggle, this idea of overcoming whatever you're going through, find one thing that you yourself, your values can rest on. Let me give you an example. It's like, for example, let's say a guy, he's going through whatever he is, and he decides, you know what, I'm going to go all into learning emunah. For some people, he's going to go all into doing more mitzvot, to doing chesed, to doing haknasat orchim, to doing whatever he is. He's banking on this one thing that's going to be able to support him through whatever challenges and tribulations he's going through. It's not enough to just protect yourself, to make sure that you don't lose yourself in the process. But it's to make sure that when you do move on, you're holding on to something that's going to keep you going. Whether that's a loyal mentor, loyal friends, your family, your father, your mother, your best friend, your wife, whatever it is, you hold on to that one thing, that one stone that you know you can rest your head on. Protecting yourself, your ideas, your values, yourself, and making sure that when you do rest on it, you have someone that's guiding you, and you have some light that is guiding you. The two lessons in this week's parasha, unbelievable, and that teaches you exactly how to move forward. I'll give you guys a story that I think gives a beautiful example for what I mean. There was a rabbi in Eretz Yisrael. His name is Rav Naftali Weinberg. Tremendous Baal Chesed. He ran unbelievable organizations. And one day he decided to this is what he did, but he did a Shabbaton for special needs children. Now, if anyone knows anything about special needs children, they need a lot of work and a lot of energy to actually work with them in a way that they're going to feel included, in a way that they're going to be able to acclimate to the programs that they're in. And he decided to make a Shabbaton, a special Shabbaton for 100 special needs children. And the ratio that he decided was going to be appropriate for this outing, for this Shabbaton, was 1-to-1. That means for every child that was going to be on this trip, there was going to be one person that was going to be a volunteer to make sure this person has the best experience for the whole 25 hours of Shabbat. You can imagine the cost, by the way. The cost of food, the cost of the hotel, the lodging, every volunteer, the tremendous cost of such a Shabbaton. It's an unbelievable chesed. So he's planning the Shabbaton for weeks, for months. And 3 hours before the Shabbaton is about to happen on Shabbat, before Shabbat, 3 hours before, he gets a call from one of the parents. And one of the parents says, listen, we're really grateful that our son was going to go on the Shabbaton, but unfortunately he got this illness, and the doctor says that it's very contagious and he can no longer come. He looks to his assistant and he says, what are we going to do? First of all, the cost to cover one student, to cover one child is incredible. It's astronomical. We can try to call the hotel, maybe get a refund, maybe this. He says, you know what? We're 3 hours before, we have one shot. Let's look at the short list of the kids that didn't make it through, that didn't make it into the Shabbaton. And let's pick the hardest one. Let's pick the hardest case, and we'll make their family Shabbat. We'll make their day. So they're looking at the list, they're looking at all the students who didn't end up getting chosen as one of the 100, and their fingers at the same time landed on the same kid. And they look at each other, they said, you know what? He's not the toughest kid, but Mishamayim, if both our fingers landed at the same time, let's go see what this is all about. Let's call the father. He rings the father 3 hours before Shabbat, and he says, listen, this Shabbaton that we're supposed to have in about 3 hours, we have one availability, one opening. We would love to have your son at our Shabbaton. And the father on the other end, he says, 3 hours before Shabbat? You're really calling me right now? And he says, I'm so sorry, I don't mean to offend you, I don't mean to do this. He said, no, you didn't offend me. But right now is when you're calling me, 3 hours before? He says, again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you. It's not like we just had an opening, it just happened. He said, no, Rabbi, let me explain what happened. He said, I know that my son wasn't selected for the Shabbaton, but see, my other son, he just turned 3. And we have a custom, we want to go up to Meron, up in Israel. We want to cut his hair. At 3 years old, there's a custom, you cut the hair, it's a big ceremony. And so we left our special needs son with someone who could watch him for Shabbat. Just 20 minutes ago, this family calls me and they say, I'm so sorry, you have to come back and pick up your son. Because we just experienced a death in the family, the father-in-law passed away, and we'll no longer be able to watch him over Shabbat. So you have to come all the way back, please pick him up. And the father's thinking to himself, he says, now I have to go all the way back, pick up my son because he can no longer be watched by this family. And his siblings, it's not his fault, but his siblings are going to feel like, again, their brother is robbing them of a nice Shabbat. Again, it's not to his fault, but again, their brother is going to be at fault for robbing the family of a vacation, of a trip that they haven't gone on in years. He says, right now you're calling me? He says, I left my wife and kids in the car and pulled over at a gas station. I'm praying to Hashem for a Yeshua. I know that this is the right thing to do because I'm serving Hashem Yitbarach and I'm praying to Hashem for a Nes. And right now you call me? He says, come, please bring your son for the Shabbaton. He goes back, he picks up his son, he brings him to the Shabbaton, he rides with his family up to Meron, and they both have the best Shabbat. After Shabbat, his father, he calls back Rabbi Weinberg, and he says, listen, I had an unbelievable Shabbat. My son had an unbelievable time. I need to know, how much does it cost per child? How much was it? He says, I'm not taking any money. As we know, the Shabbaton is free of charge. It's a chesed. We don't want to discriminate between the families who can afford, the families who cannot afford. It's not for us. We're not taking your money. He says, no, Rabbi, just tell me how much each child was. He says, I told you, we're not taking your money. He says, Rabbi, you don't know what happened on Shabbat. Let me explain. He says, when I was up in Meron with my wife, with my kids, we met a very wealthy businessman. He came from England. And he started asking us, where we're from, what are we doing over here? We told him, yeah, we're here for a vacation. My son just turned 3. We want to cut his hair by Meron after Shabbat, the whole ceremony. And my other son is in the Shabbaton. And this English businessman, he was so moved. He said, not only do I want to sponsor your son for the Shabbaton, I want to sponsor the event. I want to sponsor every child that came on the Shabbaton. He pulls out his checkbook, writes a blank check, signs it. And he says, I want you to put the number of exactly how much the entire Shabbaton cost. After Shabbat, go to Rabbi Weinberg, give him this check. So Rabbi, how much was every child? He says, I don't know, with the cost of the hotel, with this, maybe $1,000 a child. He writes out the check, $100,000 for 100 kids, and he hands Rabbi Weinberg the check. And the phone call dismisses. Rabbi Weinberg turns to his assistant in this moment, and he says, you know what? Every time we try to do an event like this, something like this always happens. He says, in truth, we didn't really have the money to fund something like this. $100,000 for a Shabbaton, there was no way. But he said, every time I know when I go for Hashem, when I'm looking at the goal as making a family Shabbat, to making something spiritual, to uplift them in a way that I know nobody else can, something always happens where it always works out. What did he do? Did he run from this struggle? Did he run from this challenge? Or did he sink his teeth in exactly the way Yaakov Avinu taught us? He protected his head, his ideas, he grounded himself, look at the list, pick another boy. And he was somech on what? On one thing, emunah. Exactly the way Yaakov Avinu teaches us in this week's parasha. I'll tell you one more thing, a personal anecdote that happened with me. Many years ago, not that many, but when I got married to my wife in 2019, many things, hashgacha pratit, where Hashem was helping us along the way in every single step of the way. Everything was unbelievable hashgacha pratit. I remember one time we were looking for an apartment. We're about to get married, we need to secure the deal, maybe 1, 2, 3 months before. We had to secure the deal. So we're looking, this apartment wasn't so good, this one was old, this one was decrepit. We started praying to Hashem. I said, Hashem, we want to build a family. We want to do this for the right reasons. Baruch Haniyut, something that's good, something that we can build a Beit Ne'eman B'Yisrael. We prayed to Hashem, and this one seller ends up reaching out to us instead of us to them. They heard that we needed it from a friend of a friend of a friend. They reached out. They said, listen, an apartment just showed up on the market. Why don't you come check it out? We said, okay, you know what? Let's go check it out. So we went to check it out, and we saw it was beautiful. Everything was new. Brand new, the one bedroom was an excellent location. They're like, yeah, no problem. You could take as many months as you need. No problem. Move in February, after the wedding, move in. Everything's perfect. We'll save it for you. Everything was like mishamayim. Everything, Hashem set up the world, the roadmap, that everything just worked out. And I said, you know what? I don't know exactly how much the landlord's going to want from me. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to put aside 2 months rent. Put aside 2 months rent in case on the first of the month, he's going to want 2 months rent. First month and security deposit. Comes the first month. And he says, you know what? I only need 1 month from you. Don't worry. Don't worry about the security deposit. I don't need a security deposit. So I said, you know what? I still have so much gratitude to Hashem for, first of all, setting this all up, for giving us this beautiful opportunity, this beautiful apartment. I want to donate the whole security deposit to somebody else. So I take the security deposit and I give it to my Rebbe. I said, you know what? You know your boys, you know your students. Give it to someone who really needs it. So I held an event maybe a few weeks later in Mobeis on Emunah and Bitachon. That night, my Rebbe calls me. And he said, Michael, you have no idea what just happened. He said, remember you gave me that money and you told me to give it to someone? I said, yeah. He said, so I gave it to someone. And you know what? He just called me with tears in his eyes. I said, why? He said, because that month, the moment I gave him the money, he told me that his house was about to be foreclosed on. He was behind on many payments. And exactly the money that you gave him, that I gave him that night, was the amount that he needed for the bank to lay off his back for another 18 months. Exactly when I said that this is going to be for Hashem. I'm not doing this for my own personal reasons. I'm doing this to build a Beit Ne'eman B'Yisrael. And the way Hashem runs the world is that it's with perfect hashgacha pratit. I knew that in a moment of whatever it was, Hashem runs the world. Whatever it was going to be, it was going to end up in exactly the hands that it needed to end up in. So boys, when you see that Yaakov Avinu and Esav, they're fighting on 2 opposite sides of the mechitza. One is saying that the point of life is this world. Eat, drink, be merry, because nothing else matters afterward. There's nothing that comes afterwards anyway. Yaakov that says, no, the goal is the next world. And we learn that when your goal is always the next world, you end up gaining both. But when your goal is this world, you end up losing both. So if we want to live a life that is spiritual focused, that's ruchani focused, we know that there's going to be challenges. But Hashem teaches, don't run away from challenges. Sink your teeth into them. Dig your toes into the sand. Make sure, protect yourself, protect your ideas, protect the values that make you you. Hold on to one thing that's going to bring you through it, and Hashem is always going to show you atzlacha and success. Hazak Baruch.